Okay, welcome to the latest webinar from Cumbria Tourism. We're just going to take a few moments while I natter on and people are able to join and come in. I'm Gill Haigh, for those of you who don't know me, Managing Director of Cumbria Tourism. There's about 150 people that have signed up for this webinar, so it might just take a moment or two whilst everybody comes in. I'm joined by Jen Cormack from Windermere Lake Cruises and Lakeland Motor Museum, and also Dan Visser, who's Director of Sales and Marketing at Langdale. Many of you will know both these guys, very prominent in the industry, and we're very fortunate to have them as part of Cumbria Tourism's executive board. Jen and Dan did a similar session to this a couple of weeks ago, which has been our most popular webinar. Not just watched by about 150 people on the session itself last time, but watched afterwards by the link that Johnny very helpfully provided on the Resource Hub, and that was watched by over 260 people. So fantastic and really good feedback that we had. We did promise that once the guidelines came through, that we would revisit this session. So that's why we're here today. Same old thing in terms of we are all muted other than the panelists. Use your live chat in order to prompt and ask questions, and I'm here really this time just to give Jen and Dan a helping hand, because there were so many questions that came through last time. They did an amazing job of managing it all, but I'm just here to lend a helping hand really, and answer any questions that might be relevant to me, particularly in Cumbria Tourism. We're also trying something a little bit new, so this is also going out on Facebook Live, and there'll be about a 20-second delay. Your questions that you pose in live chat actually won't show up that you pose on the webinar won't show up on live chat, but we'll be able to go through that. So we've got 94 people that have joined us already, so that's great. I think we're probably getting close now to the point where we'll be able to make a start. But first of all, just to say, Jen and Dan, thank you. You are now, well, we are all now getting ready to reopen. Jen, you've got an element of having reopened already, so I appreciate your time. Everybody is phenomenally busy. So Jen, Dan, if I could ask you both to just sort of spend a few minutes just talking to us about what you've been doing in the last webinar in terms of preparations, and now that you've got really into the thick of it. Dan, how's it going?
Okay, thanks Jill, good morning everyone. Yeah, it's going well. We're planning to open the self-catering and timeshare element of Langdale on Friday the 4th, or Saturday the 4th, sorry, along with hotel rooms and a limited food and beverage offering, both in Stove Restaurant and Wainwright's, so with an enhanced takeaway service and room service. We're working on getting the seated element open as quickly as possible as well. Spa and leisure we can't open until we're told we can by the government, so that's made that decision relatively straightforward, although that was part of the business where we had some fairly detailed plans in place and we were ready to open should the guidance and the legislation have allowed. We're opening our hotel business on a reduced capacity, so where we've got rooms where it would be very difficult for people to distance as they arrive and leave from their rooms, we've taken those out of stock initially until the end of September, but we can bring them back into stock as we need to. And based on that reduced availability, demand has been reasonably okay. We haven't seen a big spike since the announcement, but we have seen sort of bookings pretty steady through that. We've brought back enough staff at the moment to be able to prepare. So obviously we've had 238 staff on furlough, with about 7 running the business still. And we're starting to bring all those staff back across various different parts of the business. So we've had grounds and maintenance back in to recommission the site, make sure it's safe, and make sure everyone's going to be well looked after, make sure it looks beautiful. We've had sales and marketing back in to put together a marketing campaign and deal with the incoming bookings and manage the bookings that we'd previously moved, and deal with people's inquiries and requests about what part of the business is going to be open and what part isn't. So dealing with that, enabling a safe workplace, distancing, home working, and all that kind of stuff within that has been a bit of a challenge as people come back into the business. Some are more confident than others. Some are more adaptable to risk than others and adaptable to change. So that's been a challenge in itself. But yeah, we're ready to go, and we'll just have to wait and see what the fourth brings.
How have you managed that challenge with staff, Dan? You know, because it's really difficult to get that, you know, you're not able to get everybody in the same room at the same time. How have you managed that communication with staff?
So both with staff and with guests who are booked or going to book in, it is all about communication. We use a combination of WhatsApp, email, and a Facebook group, and old-fashioned telephone to keep in touch with all our staff and let them know what's happening. Different people, as we see across all different sort of parts of society and our friend groups, or whatever, different people have adapted to this whole situation differently. Some staff are loving their whole new lifestyle on furlough, and some are on the phone every couple of days, desperate to get back into the business. So it's just trying to look after everybody, but it's also about making sure that they're safe. So every single member of staff has to have a temperature check when they come on shift. They're issued with appropriate PPE. Their workplace has changed, particularly office-based staff. Things like staff canteen has all changed, how we look after staff welfare. And we've had 52 members of staff living on site throughout this whole period as well. So it's quite a big adjustment for them. They've been in their own bubbles, as we call them, through this, and now they've got a whole load of people suddenly turning up around their homes because they live on site. So that's proving, you know, they have to be adaptable to that as well. Yeah,
that's really challenging. Jen, you've had an interesting few weeks because not only have you had all of the preparations to develop, but also you actually last Saturday started operating in terms of your self-hire boat. So tell us first of all about the preparations, but then tell us how it went in terms of then starting to deal with bringing customers back.
Well, we always thought that it would be the self-drive boats that would be the first bit of the business to open, just because of the perfect for social distancing. They're not near any other customers. So that was the first bit of the business that we were preparing for. And we had all our risk assessments in place. We knew that we had to quarantine the life jackets. It moved from 72 hours to 48 hours. So once they cleaned, they left bag for 48 hours before they're used again. What was the most important of all of this for us was our booking system. In the past, everyone will have seen in Bowness, people just turn up, book the ticket there and then and go out. What we've had to do is educate our customers on how to work with us. They need to pre-book, they need to pre-plan, they can only arrive just before they go out. So yes, we opened the self-drives on Saturday the 20th of June. So our new booking system went live, and it was, we only released 21 boats and 1 hour and 2 hour slots. And it was a learning curve, it really was, and we were glad that it was such a slow phase start, because there were issues with the booking system, there were issues, you know, that we had to overcome. We brought the staff back in. Some staff were a little nervous, others weren't. Before this, I've just been down to speak to the guys, and they were all really relaxed. They were saying that once they came in and saw what we put in place to protect them, where they can go and have the rests, they are now really relaxed and really happy with the way customers are behaving as well. Customers are adhering to the guidelines. We've only had, out of probably now about 300 families, we've only had one family that's wanted to wear a face covering. And that kind of just shows the way that customers are reacting. But they are all well prepared to, everything's digital, we've taken no cash, we've just done all bookings online. We've had signage made outside with a QR code. So if somebody does just turn up and we have availability, the team just say, scan that QR code, book online, and then come back at the allocated time.
It's good news, Jen, isn't it? It's good. I mean, that's very positive for all of us to hear that people are actually following the guidance that you're giving them. And they're obviously having a good experience as well, which is exactly what we want to do.
The feedback we've had on our social media channels has been brilliant. You know, it was well handled, they felt safe, the team, you know, respected the distancing. So the feedback has been brilliant. Really, really appreciated that. And then from the announcement on last week that we could reduce the 2 metre down to 1 metre, that's when all of our plans, because we'd done seating on the vessels, the larger vessels where people could sit, so all of them had to be scrapped and started again, where we moved down to 1. Yeah. We're now, in fact, they've just gone to the printers, signage for every seat. We're doing blocks of areas. There'll be seats that people can't sit on, seats that can. Our operations directors down at Lakeside removing some seats and some tables from the vessels. So it is now kind of all full steam ahead and preparation to do that. We've got plastic screens to protect the skippers from the passengers and passengers from the skippers. We've got ways in which customers will have to get onto board and they'll come off in the same way. And we've changed our product completely. No longer will you be able to hop on at Bowness and hop off at Ambleside. We're now just doing 1 hour circular cruises. Because of the capacity issues, we can't have that hop on, hop off, and we just wouldn't be able to handle the capacity. So yeah, we've had to change our services completely. And it's really difficult. Customers are finding that. I think that's what I'm getting more questions about on the emails, on the phone, on the live chat is, why can't we just go Bowness to Ambleside? So yeah, completely changing our product, and what we need to do is what we've done with the self-drives is just get the messaging out to customers on how it needs to work.
Brilliant, thanks Jen. And Dan, so actually on that issue about getting the message out, there's some questions that are already coming through already, so thanks Dominic. One of the questions, Dan, you might be good at this one. Can I ask whether you are now actively contacting your guests, asking if they're staying as more than 2 households, so therefore putting the onus on them, if you will, or are you being more general and just saying that you're open from the 4th of July? What's your view, Dan?
We are contacting guests. We're increasing the frequency of guest contact for those once they book. So where they would have had 1 pre-arrival email, they now get 2, because there's a lot of information to get across to people, because the offering has changed. So it's very important that guest expectation is clear. And we've changed the way people check in, particularly around self-catering. I see the questions around self-catering. The way people check in can be very different. We've given people a whole load of choices to stay safe. But around the specific question about more than 1 family, that is going to be an issue for a lot of places. And we're not enforcing the guidance in terms of asking people not to holiday as different households. Because we don't always know. We don't always know if it's different people coming to join each other from different parts of the country. Unfortunately, I think it will happen, but we're choosing not to enforce it. We will ask people to stick to government guidance and stick to what we've put in place around our site. But certainly, in terms of government guidance, I don't think we can enforce that.
Jen, in a way, you've got a similar issue, haven't you, in terms of, you know, when you open the cruise side, you're going to have groups that are wanting to come and wanting to be together. How are you going to manage that?
We've already had inquiries from a lot of domestic coach operators saying, would we be able to facilitate their group? And we've had to actually ask them the question, yes, but they will need to be segregated from other customers, but they will have the coach operators have the same issues that we will, so they're well aware of that. Another service and another product that we've developed throughout all this is private hire of the smaller vessels. So our wooden launchers, we're going to do private family trips on them. We can hire them for an hour, and again we're asking we're asking our customers, yes, you can hire this if you're a family or if it's your family bubble. But again, all we can do is ask them the question and take their answer.
Yeah. So basically, it's guidance, isn't it? And that there is an onus on the visitor and the person that's making the booking to follow the guidance. Is what we're saying. Yeah. Okay. There's another question here from Dennis, which will be very relevant to not just B&Bs but all accommodation owners. And I know, Dan, this was something we discussed last time as well. It's about servicing rooms whilst guests are still there. So people that are staying overnight. I remember last time, Dan, you saying you would give people the option as to whether they wanted their rooms to be serviced. Does the guidance that's come out give you any further clarity?
No. I think it's up to each. Obviously, we have to interpret the rules in the way that we do, because can be a bit confusing in various different areas. But certainly in terms of servicing rooms, for our self-catering units, we've got 100 on site. They're going to be 6-day holidays initially, rather than 7. But it's not really to do with increased time for housekeeping. It's to do with, we don't know how many staff we can bring in. So if we have less staff, then we need a little bit of extra time to do the same job with fewer people. That's what that's really about. In terms of housekeeping during stays, that's on request, and it's chargeable. So we're giving people a choice. If they want someone to come in and do some housekeeping, either during their self-catering or their hotel stay, it's definitely on request. And there will be some guidance around that, which our head housekeeper is just working on at the moment. It's to do with people have to leave the room and exactly what will be done. So it'll be very clear what will be done and also what won't be done during stays. Hotel, it's a lot easier because the stays tend to be a lot shorter. But it's one of those things, we have to make sure that our guests are comfortable, but also our staff are comfortable doing it as well. And paramount is the safety of both throughout that as well.
Interesting that you were saying there that that's going to be chargeable. And I guess that's because actually what you have to do to clean a room now is very different to what you were doing to clean a room in February.
Yes, there's certainly additional cleaning. We're also providing, in all our self-catering units, we're providing a cleaning pack for guests if they want to undertake additional cleaning themselves. So if they want to clean the surfaces with some appropriate product, that will be in there for them, and it's available on request for hotel guests as well, just to give people the option to make themselves even safer.
Yeah.
But certainly everything we do, we've certainly got to consider our team, and we've got to keep our team, they've got to be happy and comfortable to go and do the job that they're doing. So we have to provide them with an environment that's safe, so that they aren't in there with guests, and also all the equipment to be safe as well. And that comes at a cost. Our cost base in terms of operating the business is increasing significantly, while we've got fewer hotel rooms, which is where we make our profit. So challenging time to be profitable and be safe is pretty impossible at the moment.
Thanks, Dan. There's a couple of questions coming up here around the use of face masks for your staff, and what the guidance is saying to you about that. What's your take on that, and how are you both implementing that with your staff, Jen?
So we've issued all of our staff that we've brought back face coverings.
That's beautifully modelled there.
So yeah, we've issued them to all of our staff, both here in the office and the guys that are working out on site. They've all chosen not to wear them. Everybody had the choice whether they wanted to or not, and yeah, nobody's decided to wear them. They all can. We've asked them not to bring their own, to use the ones that we've issued, but yeah, nobody's worn them. It will be different when we start operating our Class 5 vessels, because we're public transport, so face coverings are mandatory. So both the crew and the customers will be required by law to wear them.
Thanks, Jen. Dan?
We're in a similar situation. As we're bringing people in, we're providing PPE. I haven't got one to model, unfortunately, but it looks exactly the same as Jen's with a different logo on. So we're providing. Interestingly, we did a survey of our past guests while we were in lockdown, as we were starting to plan to reopen, and something like, it was over 90% said they would be comfortable with staff serving them to be wearing face masks. They also said they would be prepared to wear face masks where they could. Obviously, eating your lunch is going to be a little bit challenging with a face mask, but they said they would be prepared to. And again, over 90% of the people that responded said that they would be prepared as guests to have a temperature check before they went into facilities. We're not implementing that, but it's interesting that our guests were prepared to do that, to be able to go and have a holiday.
It's really interesting, isn't it? Yeah, thank you. Peter, sorry, Jen.
Just what's interesting as well, from operating now for 6 days, we've had 300 families that have come through, and we've only had one family arrive with face coverings. Nobody else has. I just thought that was really interesting. I'd expected to see a lot more people with them on, and it could be because it's been warm, I don't know, but I think that just gives you a bit of an idea of consumer confidence and how our customers are feeling about it.
I think that's really interesting because you're obviously an outdoor attraction. And we know from the visitor research that CT undertook that people feel confident about us being they perceive Cumbria as being a safe place. It'd be interesting to see what happens when people start to move inside as well. Peter Hensman's asked the question on everybody's lips really. Social distancing guidelines don't actually say we can go down to 1 metre plus. They say that we can go down to 1 metre plus where 2 metres is not viable. Therefore, the question is, how do you interpret what's not viable? Jen, you must have had to think this through and through and through.
We have, and 2 metres isn't viable on a vessel. Customers do have to pass others if they're going to the toilet. So that's where we're putting the guidelines in for 1 metre plus. We're also, we are putting it on our website and we will put it in all of our literature to say that there will be times where customers may pass other customers at less than 1 metre, and this will be if a customer, is passing or queuing for the toilet and to take appropriate care. So we're letting customers know that that could happen before they book, but it's just like you would in a shop. It's the same risk there. Yeah.
Dan, anything to add on that one?
Yeah, we rightly so. We all focus primarily on keeping guests distanced from each other, which is absolutely important. What we've seen recently on the beaches in Bournemouth and at the odd time in Bowness is that the guidance is being completely ignored by an awful lot of people, which puts us at risk and puts our operation at risk. But we've also got to think about our teams. Wainwright's Inn, for example, is a great example where we've got a very, very small kitchen, which can be very busy. So 2 metres in there means we've essentially probably got 4 items on the menu. But we've got to keep our staff safe, and that's the way it has to be. Bringing that down to 1 metre doesn't really make too much difference because you can't get more people in at 1 metre than you can at 2. So those are the things you've got to consider. Your people that work for you, the same sort of distancing needs to apply to keep them safe as well, because without looking after them, they can't look after your guests, and your business isn't able to operate. But the viable thing as well, you need to think about the sustainability of your business and whether it's financially viable to operate at those kind of distances. And I've spoken to a number of businesses where it's not financially viable to operate at all. And while we still have some forms of government assistance running until the end of October, people need to make some, just because it's summer doesn't mean to say you're going to make a profit if you're operating at a distance or capacity is reduced or your offering is reduced. So it is still more viable for some people to stay closed, or it may be more viable for some people to stay closed. And that's, shouldn't necessarily rush to open just because you can. You need to open, think about other things as well, like your reputation and looking after previous guests that might go elsewhere. There's all these other sort of things to think about in whether you open or not.
Oh, thank
What's
you.
really interesting from the piece of work we did prior to this, when we were lobbying government for the 2 metre to 1 metre, it was interesting the amount of businesses that came back to us to say at 2 metres it's not viable. At 1 metre they can then start making a profit, and that was kind of a consistent message across the board, wasn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely was. We have got 25 questions in here, people. No pressure, Jen and Dan. Leslie, thanks for that. Leslie's just posted on here that they're asking guests if they would prefer to wear face coverings at breakfast, but they're also serving people to the side rather than face to face, which makes loads of sense, doesn't it? Sally, thanks for this one. We've had loads of queries about this. So, Jen, Dan, what processes have you got in place if somebody tests positive for COVID and you then end up being contacted by Track and Trace?
Okay.
Go on, Dan, I'll let you go.
Yeah, there's quite a few things to consider, because there's the obligation to, for all our guests, we've got their contact details anyway, and we're only operating for guests to start with, so it's relatively straightforward for us. When we start, if that guidance is still in place, when we do start to welcome people who are not staying on site, for example in Wainwright's, then obviously we have to take contact details, keep those contact details, still work within the data protection and GDPR guidelines as well to look after those appropriately and hand them over if we need to. In terms of the possible implications to our business, if somebody does test positive and they were at our business and we have to hand over details of guests and staff, we have no idea what potential implications. We've looked at all sorts of worst case scenarios in terms of possibly losing the whole restaurant team, in terms of staff, if they have to isolate, in terms of bad PR, if somebody, and they're perfectly entitled to, wants to make a bit of a drama because, you know, they can't go to work for 2 weeks because they were in the same restaurant at Langdale as somebody that tested positive. There's all sorts of those implications, but people do seem to be wanting to come and stay, knowing that these are the rules, and we will include those risks in our communication on our website with owners, that, you know, we're holding their data. We may be obliged to provide their data to the government and the track and trace system should that happen. But guests at the moment don't seem to have a problem with that. Whether they'll be just as confident once we've handed their details over and they've been traced, who knows? We'll deal with that's one of those things we'll just have to deal with when it happens.
With us, because the way we've had to adapt our business really and adapt the business model, we will now have contact details of everybody that makes a booking with us, and we will know what boat they were on and at what time. So we will have that, and the way our staffing works as well, our crews work in teams, so it does segregate it that way. But I think if a customer has decided to come out, you know, it's their choice. They have decided to come and stay with Dan or come on a boat trip. They're aware of what the risks are. So we're not opening up. We're not forcing customers to come and use our services. It's I think the risk adverse that will be with us first.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. Thank you. Jackie's asked a question here, which Dan, I think you might be able to support with. So I think, Jackie, what the question, oh, it's moving. I think what the question is what if people from different households choose to book into a room in accommodation? There could be socially distancing. And is it correct that they should be wearing face coverings if the room can't keep people 2 meters apart? Dan?
Yeah, family groups, more than whatever the rule is, more than 2 family groups can't get together. I don't think that an accommodation provider can realistically police that on behalf of the government. I think it's perfectly right and it's okay for an accommodation provider to remind people of the guidance, and possibly remind people of their disappointment if their guests choose not to adhere to the guidance. But I wouldn't suggest that the accommodation providers should necessarily spend too much time trying to enforce the government guidance. be a lot more focused on providing a really safe place for those people to come on holiday. I guess if you wanted to turn the booking away because people weren't, I guess you probably could do that if you wanted to, but it's going to happen. And I've had people contacting us booking self-catering accommodation where they've definitely got, you know, different families coming together or different parts of the same family coming together. And I have referred those people to the government guidance. But I don't think we can do much more than that.
Thank you. Now then, this is one that, again, this is you, Dan, really. What's your view from the guidance? Is it a rule? Is it definite that you need to change the mattress protectors every time? What are you doing about that, Dan, in Langdale?
Yeah, we're rotating all of our sort of laundry. So yes, we are doing that, but I'm not aware that it's a requirement of the legislation. That's probably one where you need to spend a bit more time actually looking at that. Also, I don't think for our sector, unless you really do something wrong and you have a whole load of cases of COVID in your accommodation, I'm not aware that there's going to be a big police force out there going around checking up on everyone. If you look after your guests, if your guests are safe and if your guests are healthy, then you're doing a great job and you're not going to have a problem. I think the only accommodation providers who are going to have an issue are where they don't provide a safe experience and a safe environment for their staff and guests. But guests will choose with their wallets and they just won't spend any money with you again if you do that. So that's a risk that you'd have to take. And if due to no fault of your own, if you've done everything you can to make sure your accommodation is safe and fits as best you can with the guidance, then you're doing right and you will be safe. Lots and lots of hotels outside the Lake District have been operating at a reasonable occupancy right throughout this for key workers throughout sort of towns and cities, and they've been operating fine within the guidance. So as long as we do operate in a safe and sensible way and keep a record of absolutely everything we're doing just in case, document everything. So if you do need to refer back to it, at least you've got a record of absolutely everything you're doing, your policies, your risk assessments, your processes. Just keep a record of absolutely everything just in case you need it.
That's really good advice.
Having those risk assessments on your website as well, isn't it? If you employ over 50 staff, then your risk assessments need to go on. Ours are on there, and we can see people are looking at them. We can see what people are navigating, where they're navigating to on the website. So I think it is important to have that there.
That's maybe a good opportunity to just talk a little bit about the new accreditation scheme that Visit England launched yesterday. So it's called, for those of you that don't know, it's called We're Good to Go. And it's being built in tandem with the government guidance. So actually, frustratingly, we couldn't get our hands on it until the guidance came out. And in fact, it was about 24 hours after, because they were quickly having to adapt it to make sure it met the guidance and the changes around the 2 metre, 1 metre ruling. So for those that don't know about it, that's live now. Johnny can put the link into the chat for everybody. And Dan, you've already had a go at doing it.
So we've had a go at doing the Visit Britain accreditation and the AA accreditation, both of which are pretty straightforward. So yeah, it's for an accommodation provider, particularly the Visit Britain one is well worth doing. And also it's well worth using the accreditation as a way of making people feel safe and as a marketing tool as well. Just filling out the boxes on its own won't really do much for you. It might make you feel better, reassuring that you're doing the right thing, but actually then make the most of it and use it as a marketing tool and use it as a way to let your customers or guests know that you're operating in a safe way.
The Visit England have also been given quite a significant marketing budget to go alongside the We're Good to Go, and it is a government accredited scheme. So I think that what is positive there is if you have that certificate, there will very quickly become quite a significant awareness of it. And we know from when we did the visitor survey, our visitors told us that actually they would feel reassured by that. So as Dan says, it's a quick, easy thing to do that can help you in terms of reassuring your visitors. So moving down then, Liz, I might be able to answer this one. So how much information are you giving people about what's open before they come, and is it in any one place? So most of the businesses are telling us retail's already open. Most of the businesses are telling us that they expect to be operating, if not from the 4th of July, pretty soon thereafter. We're busily updating, and we're putting a call out to businesses to let us know so that we can update the website and let people know what is open and direct people to that. Dan, Jen, what are you doing on that score?
I'm communicating with hotels and self-catering accommodations on what we're doing, asking them to tell their customers when they do arrive that it is pre-booking, and I think that will be the same, you know, with all. It's getting that information to them before they arrive, really, to say yes, we're here. Obviously, it's social media. We're just pushing out on social media. Working in collaboration, the inquiries that come through, you know, what's open, what shops are open, and it's just working in collaboration with each other at this time and sharing as much information as we can.
Brilliant, thank you.
Yeah, we're doing exactly the same, and we're also letting our guests know that their experience when they get here is going to be different. You know, a lot of we have a pretty high, like most people do, a very high level of repeat business. So it's just trying to set people's expectations that, you know, not to be disappointed when they get here. The experience will be different rather than compromised, or rather than be worse. It's not a worse version of what they had before. It's way, way better than lockdown, but it might still be a little bit different to what they've had before. And we're working with, you know, as the visitor attractions open, like Jen and the private hire, the boat shoot, Jen mentioned earlier and stuff like that. We're working with people as they open to make sure we've got up-to-date information for our guests.
Thanks, Dan. Jen, Tim's emailed here saying it's interesting that coach operators are contacting you. I believe it's 24, 26 with social distancing per coach, but minibus is problematic. But most groups arrive to us by coach, so it's an issue from a cost effectiveness perspective.
Yeah, I've spoken to the operators, and I was surprised actually when they came and said, right, yes, we're running, we're actually doing a test with one next week as well. They're just bringing their staff and their drivers, and they're going to see how it works. But yeah, they're saying that they can get 24 people on a 45-seater coach with the social distancing, and they will sit people within their bubbles or whoever they live with. A lot of the issues will be, and I've spoken to the coach operators, quite a lot of people do go on coach trips alone. So there will, rather than 2 people sat next to each other, it'd be 1, and that could then reduce it down to 12. So I think they're just going to see how it works. But what I was really, it was great to hear when I asked the coach operators, how are the consumers, how do they feel about this? And they said they've actually got more inquiries than they can handle because people are wanting to do it. So it's there, but it will be on a limited capacity. The coach operators are obviously having to put their rates up, as you know, to cover the costs. But I think people are well prepared to pay a little bit more if they know that they're in a safe environment.
Thanks, Jen. Yeah, Leslie, thanks. Leslie's just put something on there for people in terms of further advice that's there about leaving cleaning materials in room. Bryony's asked a really good question. Do you know what, Bryony? I don't actually know the answer to this yet, but if we can't answer it between us, I'll take it away. But it's about the fact that actually, you know, we know now that, you know, the guidance is that more than 30 people doing the same activity is illegal. But obviously, when you're organising events, things like outdoor cinemas, partnering up with campsites, you know, does it mean that more than 30 people dining or watching a film is still banned? I actually don't know the answer, Bryony. I'll see if Jen and Dan do, but if not, I'll definitely take it away.
It relates to gatherings, so social gatherings or organised single events. So opening a restaurant isn't an event because they're all individual bookings. whereas booking an event with a meal for 30 people all together as the same booking is where it would apply, is my understanding.
Thanks. Bryony, interestingly, Kurt Jansen spoke yesterday at the Cumbria Tourism AGM. Was it only yesterday? He emailed me in the afternoon, and the volume of queries and questions that's coming through, because obviously as this guidance comes out, we're all looking at it and trying to interpret it. So there will be lots of questions like that. So for everybody on the call, if there are queries, you want to pass them through that we're not able to deal with today, we'll do our best to do so after the meeting. Adam, self-catering, is there a legal requirement for holiday accommodation owners to allow the guests to stay if they are confirmed as positive? Dan?
Okay, so no, short answer. When hotels were providing accommodation for key workers, the key workers were generally staying close to their work, and it was far better for them to isolate at the hotel than it would have been to go back to their family, and then you have the whole family isolating. So the guidance for those hotels was to isolate at the premises. When we start opening for holidays, that just isn't possible, because especially if you're fairly busy, you're going to have someone else checking in within the 2 weeks that they're going to have to isolate. So it's just not possible. So liaising with the property owner, and the property owner making provision for them to travel home would be the sensible way forward, because it just won't be possible to isolate. But you should have some kind of plan documented in terms of a policy ready to use and ready to put in place, so your staff know, you know, and your guests know exactly what to do should someone test positive who's staying with you. There will be a requirement as well under the tracing to provide those details should you get asked for them. So it's worth just that particular part of the legislation, looking at that and seeing how that applies to your particular business and how you can put a plan in place to affect that if it should happen.
Well, thanks, Dan. So questions still coming thick and fast, 26 questions or comments in chat, and there's a run here for you, Dan, which I think you'll be able to answer. So from Sally, are you asking guests to strip their beds and open windows before leaving?
Yes. In terms of catering, yes, we are. In terms of hotel, we're just asking guests to ventilate as they leave. Not always possible. Some people's windows don't open fully for health and safety reasons and whatever. But yes, where possible, we're asking people to ventilate their accommodation before they leave by leaving the windows open. Yeah.
Right, and what about stripping beds, Dan?
Self-catering, yes. Hotel, no.
Thank you. And then the next one, which is a sort of an extension of that, what's your view on tea, coffee, kettles, wine glasses, etc. in rooms? What are you doing about that?
Fresh every single time, so we're replacing all of that every time, so it's, you know, so we take it away and wash it. It is an area where guests have to make their own choices. We'll do everything we can to make sure the environment that they're staying in is safe, but guests will have to make their own choices. We are providing individually wrapped items, say tea bags, for example. We are having to provide everything individually wrapped, which is a step back in terms of sustainability, but we'll just have to accept that in the short term in terms of keeping everyone safe. And again, it's looking at what you've got in your accommodation, looking at the guidance. Yes, interpret the guidance, but don't just do exactly what the guidance says to the minimum. Do what you think you can do to make everybody actually safe, to make them feel safe, and yet still have a really quality experience. Yeah,
and that comes back to that thing, doesn't it, that we know that at the moment what the visitor is wanting is, yes, the brilliant experience, but number one is safety. Yeah. Dan, another question for you. There's at least 2 more coming your way. Risk assessments, are you putting it on your website so your guests can see?
Yes.
Thank you.
We will be. As our teams come back in, and it's pretty short notice now, but as they come back in and start to open up their businesses, we'll finalise the risk assessments then, because they're all changing from we're keeping our kitchens at 2 meters, but we will be opening our restaurants at 1 meter plus, whatever you call it. So we're just finalising those, and we will be publishing those on the website.
And Jen, you've already said that that's what you're doing, isn't it?
Yes, yep, they're on there.
Transparency, yeah. Dan, what about soft furnishings in relation to surface cleaning? So that unlike bedding, they can't be cleaned after every guest visit. So how are you dealing with that?
In the normal way, just servicing rules. I know some accommodation providers are removing a number of soft furnishings. We are a little bit, but not quite so much. We also have one of these foggers that you put in the room, and it pumps out some chemicals to try and keep everything safe. But again, it's one of those areas where you need to do the best you can. Obviously, you can't see COVID, so you don't know if it's there or not. So you just have to make sure the environment that people are coming into is as clean as you can possibly make it. And also, a bit like a risk assessment, possibly publish what your cleaning regime is, so people can actually see it and decide if it's appropriate for them or not. We've done that with our accommodation. And we're sending it out to people before they arrive to let them know exactly what we're doing in the room before they arrive. And people can make their choice. If they're happy with what we're doing, great, make a booking and go with it. If you're not happy, then clearly we're at this point in time, then a stay with us won't be appropriate for those people. And I'd rather they didn't come if they're not going to be happy with it, rather than come and then be disappointed. So keeping guests informed of everything you do is really important, whether it's on your website or through email, social media. If somebody wants to make a booking, or they have made a booking, through pre-arrival correspondence and so on. Because that way, whatever you choose to do, tell the guests about it and they'll be happy with it.
Yeah, okay, thank you. And then there's quite a few comments on there and some really helpful links and guidance around PPE equipment. So I won't go through all of that now, because there's some great links in there that people have shared and provided. Johnny will capture those as well, so we'll be able to share them around afterwards too. Jen, we've talked about Windermere Lake Cruises. What about the Motor Museum? Tell us a bit more about your plans for opening there, because that's a completely different kettle of fish, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. And especially on a day like today as well, a wet day, it's a popular attraction. But we're planning to open on the 4th of July, the Motor Museum. In place already is all the Perspex screens. Floor markings are down. We're working on today the back end system, so to do timed entry only, so it's pre-book and timed entry, and families can only come with 15 minutes between each other. Marked out inside the museum where people can stay, and they mustn't pass until if they see a family in front of them. We've there's a part in the museum, I don't know if anyone's been in, where there are some stairs. So we've actually put some traffic lights in. We're just trying to get the technology to work now. So it's basically red and green, stop and go. So that will tell you when you can come down the stairs or go up the stairs, so you don't cross another family. So everything's in place, everything's there. The coach operators that I was speaking about earlier, they're bringing up their drivers next week to give it a trial run to see if it all works and how it works, and have we spaced them out, have we spaced everything out far enough to give people enough time to go through the museum and enjoy it. We've put passing places in, so if a family are looking at an exhibit and it's taking longer, there is passing places where customers can then pass at a 2 meter space. So everything's in place, lots of floor markings or road markings, as we're trying to link it back to the motor theme. But yeah, that's there and ready to go. It's just the booking system that we're just waiting to get right, and then as soon as it is, that will be launched and we'll open our doors on the 4th.
Thanks, Jen. And actually, Nick's asked a question which I think in a way kind of follows on from that. And I think your experience of what you've gone through in the last week when you have opened is, do we need to consider customer ignorance / ambivalence? I mean, your experience so far seems to be pretty positive.
It has, and customers have been distancing, and if anything, they've been more than distancing. So, when they are queuing, they're maybe not sticking to the 2 meters, they're just going a bit further. So I think even when things are reduced, customers are still really courteous of each other. That's what we've seen so far. Wednesday and Thursday were two of the hottest days of the year so far. So there was a lot of people here in Bowness, but still our customers stuck to the guidelines, and they're really respectful of the staff as well.
Great to hear. And actually, alongside the accreditation scheme that Visit England have launched, there is something called Know Before You Go, which again is another campaign that will run alongside the accreditation scheme. And that's all about encouraging people to know kind of almost what the etiquette needs to be about plan ahead, book ahead, you know, about social distancing, taking your litter home, etc., etc. And we'll all be backing that and supporting that as well. Alison's asking, is it okay for a small guest house to continue to serve breakfast in the dining room with different times for different households, maintaining social distance and at-seat service? I mean, that sounds absolutely perfect to me, Dan.
Absolutely. As long as you stick to the distancing requirements, and there will be various different ways for people to do that. It might be a case of taking tables out. Exactly as suggested, it might be a case of staggering times, might be a case of delivering breakfast experience in the room. Yeah, there's all sorts of different ways for people to do that. You need to look at your own business and work out what's the best way to deliver a fantastic experience for people, but in a way that's safe. So, you know, when we open for seated breakfast, we're planning to have an extended time, so people can have breakfast right up to lunchtime, for example, and things like that. So just be creative with what you've got and the space you've got, you know, and do that customer journey for yourself or guest journey for yourself. Imagine you were a guest, what would you want to do? And kind of walk yourself through that whole guest journey to work out the best way to do it and still deliver an experience that will make somebody want to come back.
Great, thank you. Dan, I think this one's you again, really. The guidance, is it telling you that you need to remove books, magazines? I know that I think you were already talking last time that you're going to do that anyway. So
in terms of, no, I don't think we have to. What we've chosen to do is where we've got your sort of traditional in-room collateral for tourist information, for details on the accommodation, what to get where and when, emergency numbers, all those things that you find in all accommodation. Bible maybe only if you're a traditionalist. We've moved that all online, so absolutely everything's online, so people don't have to. They can just use their own device to access all of that information. And actually, I think we'll probably keep it that way going forward. I know there are you know, we'll put some stuff in the rooms, but in terms of the specific advice around their stay, what they can do, and tourist information, because that's changing all the time as people open up, as services change. That's changing, so all that's moving online.
Brilliant, thank you. Loads of advice that everybody's sharing with each other on here as well. So Leslie talking about how she's communicating to her visitors about what is open locally, and also Leslie, you know, the idea of using your marketing to say to people, you've got a book. You know, there may not be availability if you book in. It's actually quite a powerful tool, isn't it, in order to encourage people to and to sort of confirm your own bookings. I've got Tim asking if all the public loos are open and will they be free, contactless, cash. Tim, I'm pretty confident now that if not all, close to all public loos are open. I know a number of them have moved to contactless, some are free. I don't think there's a one size fits all, but I think that we have got significant improvement on where we were a few weeks ago, and pretty much I would say that everything's up and running. One of the questions that we've been asked previously is, you know, are operators going to have their loos open? Jen, you're even going to have your loos open on your boats, aren't you?
Yes, we are. We will put sanitisers on the outside of the toilet. We'll put virucidal cream, hand wash inside the toilet. A sign on the door asking people to wash their hands. But yeah, we will have the toilets open on vessels. Great,
thank you. And Stu's providing some advice there about anti-allergy mattress protectors that's there. And Leslie, well done. She's got a good to go certificate. It was quite easy, Leslie. And I'll feed that back, Leslie. We've got a call with Visit England this afternoon about being able to lift it off the website. But yeah, thank you. Is there a risk assessment template specifically for small hotels? We've just got 11 rooms, and that's Linda Dodd. Danny, are you aware?
I'm not aware of one, but I'm sure there is. Someone in our place will know where there is one. We can share back.
Right.
I think there was one on that UKH
There's just
link.
There's just been, thanks Jen for prompting. So we've been waiting for the guidance from UK Hospitality, and that's literally just come out within about half an hour before this meeting. So Johnny I think it's probably gone out to people already. Actually, Johnny's just posted that out in our mailings this morning, so you should have that. But we'll have a look. We'll double check it for you.
It's also in the chat for this webinar, right? It's one of the first messages if people scroll up to the chat.
Brilliant, thank you. That's great, thank you. So where am I? Alison, this is the whole issue about do you need to leave 24 hours between guests? Dan?
No, you don't. We've chosen to leave a day for our self-catering just to start with around staff, but no, you don't necessarily. You need to make sure that you've got the resources to clean the accommodation properly and to a standard that you're happy with and is appropriate and fits your risk assessments, your policies and so on. If that means you need an extra 24 hours, then you need an extra 24 hours to be able to do it properly. So it needs to be appropriate and it needs to be safe. If you can't create a safe environment without 24 hours, then you do need it. But there isn't, at the moment, I understand, there isn't a requirement for that.
Thank you, that's great, thanks, yeah. Jeanette, are people asking guests a list of questions in relation to COVID-19 prior to arrival? She'd been to the dentist yesterday and had to answer all sorts of questions. Are you asking those questions of your guests in advance, Dan?
Not to the level of the dentist. That would be slightly intrusive, I think, for a hotelier to do that. We are reminding guests that they have an obligation to keep themselves, our team, and our local communities safe. And we have a banner when people arrive that they'll see if they arrive that way. That reminds them of their obligation to not come if they've got symptoms, to wash their hands regularly and so on. And we're reminding guests of their obligations, but we're not making it a requirement that they fill out a form or have any kind of tick box or anything. But just reminding people they have a responsibility to other guests, to themselves and to our local communities is still important.
Okay, and Craig's question there was similar to the previous one about that, whether or not we're gapping between bookings for self-catering, and Leslie reminding people to make sure that their suppliers have undertaken their risk assessments for government guidelines as well. Dan, I guess this links to the one that we were talking about with soft furnishings earlier on about what the guidance is saying in terms of shared lounge seating areas. Is there expectations in a small hotel that the guest lounge is cleaned and the soft furnishings are cleaned after every visit?
You should be doing that anyway, really, to make sure that people are safe. So, if you can operate that facility with appropriate distancing and with appropriate cleaning in place, and your guests are willing to or want to go and use that facility, then that's a decision that for you and your business, whether that's appropriate or not. You need to be absolutely comfortable that it is a safe place and nobody's putting each other, you or your staff, at risk. An example is we're closing that kind of space in our accommodation temporarily. So we're not going to operate any shared lounges just at this time. So we'll see how that goes.
Okay.
The customers, our guests so far have been appreciative and haven't had an issue with it when we've been communicating with them. And as soon as the time is right for us to be able to operate that safely, then we will. Our guest lounge, particularly in Brimstone Hotel, has a food and beverage offering, complimentary food and included food and beverage offering within it. So that makes it particularly challenging to operate that in a safe way with people coming and going. So we've decided just not to operate it.
Yeah, okay. And Dominic's making the point, really, it's impossible to house clean every item every time. So is there something, Dan, in your terms and conditions that you're making it clear that there, you know, that there's a responsibility on guests as well?
It's when we not in our T's and C's, don't forget that it's disclaimers are not really any disclaimer that is irrelevant if it trumps your statutory rights. So your statutory rights will never be changed, even no matter what your disclaimer says. So just have to remember that. But certainly we are reminding guests of their obligation to keep everybody safe and still help and support us to operate within the guidance. I think it will be. I think that the instances of people wanting to have an experience that doesn't fit in with the guidance should be quite rare, because these people have chosen to come here knowing the risks.
Yeah.
So going back to the lounge thing, I wouldn't go and sit in a shared guest lounge at the moment. I just wouldn't do it. But I'm sure there are people that do want that experience. You know, and as long as you can provide the safest environment possible, it's up to them whether they take that risk or not.
Yeah. Because you can see it, can't you, where, you know, if pubs are going to be able to open, restaurants are going to be able to, you know, what's the difference between that and a shared lounge? So, but everybody's going to be different in terms of their attitude towards risk. And I guess that attitude is going to change, you know, depending on how things go in the next few months as well. We've Dan the fogger. Everybody wants to know about your fogger. Have you got a recommended fogger model?
Absolutely not.
I never thought I would be asking that question.
I can provide a link to where we bought it from, and that's it. That's my involvement in operating the device stops there, unfortunately.
Okay. Who'd heard of foggers before this last few months? But great. All right, we'll share that afterwards, Claire. And then this is something we discussed last time as well, was about leaving the question about leaving leaflets and print in guest rooms. And you've made the decision, Dan, haven't you, that you're going to remove that?
Yeah, it's all digital. Also, bear in mind what's happening and how people are opening. Most of it's out of date at the moment anyway. So I could leave leaflets for all sorts of visitor attractions, but they're probably not open. They probably need to be booked in advance and all this kind of stuff. So at the moment, details about facilities and, you know, anything that I would have had in the past about, well, Windermere Lake Cruises and Motor Museum is out of date now anyway. We just need to provide up-to-date information. And to a certain extent, information about the destination, of course, is still relevant, because that fundamentally, the landscape that we all enjoy living in and people want to come here for hasn't fundamentally changed. And the way people can go and enjoy the outdoors is still there, and that hasn't really changed. But certainly the visitor attractions, bars, restaurants and so on, we need to just provide the most up-to-date information we can, and that's why it's all digital, because we can change it on a daily basis.
The leaflets that were distributed before lockdown are completely out of date. We've changed our services, we've changed everything. But also looking at a strange person that does look at leaflet racks, have been looking at them in booths in different places. Nothing's moving. Nobody's picking them up. I think they are a place that customers don't, they don't want to pick them up. But because everybody's products and services are changing so quickly, and will change as we go, maybe into more relaxed or maybe heightened, we just don't know. So everything that we're doing is online as well.
Great, thank you. Although interestingly, we've got massive demand for print at the moment in terms of the holiday guides, but I guess the difference there is that's one piece of print going to one person or to one household. So that, I guess that's where the difference lies. Just going back to social distancing and mitigation measures, is there a full list of these measures? I'm not aware that there is. It may well be that starts to come out as further. What seems to happen with this guidance is you get the guidance, then we all start to digest it, understand it. Further questions come, so it's likely that further guidance may come or may not, and it's just for us to interpret that. And Bill, you're making a good point, Dan, that Kurt Janssen at the AGM yesterday was really reinforcing the importance for establishments to review and, where necessary, amend their cancellation policies because of further lockdown. Jen, as well, what's your view, Dan?
I think a lot of hoteliers learnt, a lot of accommodation providers learnt quite a bit about cancellations and the effect in the early days when those that were trying to stick to their T's and C's in terms of refunds had a bit of a problem. Those where they had fully paid rates, where the money was being held by an online travel agent, and so on. So yeah, so it's been a great time to look at booking terms and cancellation policies across the board. There may well be another lockdown, but it's a really good opportunity to look at your terms and conditions for everything you do, for those people that book direct, for those people that use online travel agents or different platforms, and make sure that they're appropriate for now, but also appropriate for challenging situations that might come along around the corner. And none of us had thought that a global pandemic should be something that we think about in our terms and conditions, but obviously we do, and we've had to. So yeah, it's a really good opportunity to look at that, not only to protect the business, but also to reassure guests that you're doing the right thing, and also to use it to drive bookings through the channel you want. So your terms and conditions don't have to be the same for every single channel, and certainly mine are definitely not for each channel you sell your product through. And it's a really good opportunity to use that to look after yourself, to look after your guests, and to use it as a marketing tool as well.
Jen, you're nodding away there.
Yeah, right at the beginning of lockdown, we were really flexible with our tour operators, our customers. We just refunded straight away. We've always had that in our T's and C's. Not so much with customers. With online bookings, but again, we amended those very quickly, and everything was fully refundable or transferable. And going forward, that's going to be one of our marketing messages to customers, that you can book this, but if you do need, if we do go into lockdown or you do need to change for any COVID related matter, we will be really flexible. And it just gives the customer that little bit of reassurance that should anything go wrong, they're not going to lose the money.
And I think that there has been that lack of confidence to an extent with third parties. So actually, part of the campaign that we're doing as the recovery is very much about pushing direct booking, which is a plus, isn't it?
Yeah.
Frank right there is asking if there's any evidence if UV light machines can kill COVID. I don't know whether Dan's got any. No, head shaking there. Not aware. No. And Dan,
I think the science has got a lot of catching up to do. We're operating at quite, moving forward out of lockdown at quite a pace, which is obviously the right, it's what we can do at the moment. And I think there's an awful lot of science around COVID that will come out, obviously, once they've established it. So
yeah,
one of those things. If you think using UV is good, and if that's a choice you make, then make sure you tell your guests you're doing it, because that's another level of reassurance you can give them to make them feel safe.
Brill. Dan, have you heard back from the AA scheme? I know that you have. Okay, Jonathan's not heard anything yet. Did it take a bit of time?
It takes a while, yeah, but yes, we've heard back and have completed the process. So if you've done it already, then it shouldn't take too much longer.
Brill. And thanks, Elaine from Heart, who's offering just an update there on how they're dealing with the leaflet rack situation, which is really helpful for people to know. And the other thing I would say to you as well is that we've got people working around the clock to update the new website from Cumbria Tourism, and we're putting quite a lot of money into marketing that website out to our visitors. So we use that, point people to it, but also let us know as you're opening, and we'll make sure that that's bang up to date on the website too. Liz is asking, Jen, this is an interesting one for you. Any worries about overseas visitors who are not following the quarantine rules? Are you seeing any overseas visitors?
We've looking at the booking system, we've definitely had visitors that may have originated from overseas but are probably living in the UK at the moment. So I don't think you can, with if you do see a visitor that's not English, you can't just assume that they are from overseas. We do have a lot living in the UK, but in terms of visitors and enquiries from overseas, we've had very little. Group business, we know that probably won't happen. We have had inquiries through our Chinese social media channels asking when they can come, and the biggest question has been when will the quarantine stop. Basically, no overseas visitor, I think, will come and quarantine for 14 days. They just won't come. It's a worry for us as the UK because we don't want to stop being on these itineraries or group programs, because once we're off them, it's very difficult to get back on. So we're keeping those levels of communication open. Japan is an area that are very, very cautious, and they see the UK as kind of a danger zone at the moment. So it's just about, as and when we come out of this, communicating with our international visitors on how to visit safely. But whilst we have the 14-day quarantine, I don't think we'll see those visitors.
Thanks, Jen. They were answering loads of questions, and well done everybody, but there's so much to talk about here, so I'm going to try to move us through as quickly as we can so we cover everybody's questions. Caroline, yes, the links will be available via email afterwards. Pauline, UK hospitality, do you have to be a member to access it? You don't. There was a lot of queries around that yesterday. To access the guidance that's just come out, you do not have to be a UK hospitality member, so I can answer that one. Dan, is it acceptable to, is it acceptable to serve food directly to the guest table in front of them, i.e. coming within 1 metre, or do we need to put it on a side table to stay, so that you stay within that safe distance?
My understanding, if you choose to, you can put food down on a guest table. Obviously, it's best not to do it, do it sideways, do it from a different angle, all that kind of stuff. But it might be, again, look at your business and look at the ways you can do things to keep people safe. It might be that you have a collection table where they go and collect it from. It might be that you put it down adjacent to the table. There's lots of different ways that you can flex what you do to make sure that everything is safe and you're keeping your teams and your guests safe. Of course, the safer a guest feels, the higher price they're going to pay for it. Hopefully, you get your marketing right and get your processes right. You should be able to hopefully charge a premium for safety, whereas before you may have paid a premium for a spa or, I don't know, a 4-poster bed or whatever. In this environment, safety is hopefully what people are going to be willing to pay a premium for. But it's very much looking at your business and the best way you can deliver the things particular to your business. Some places are so small that they can't flex it too much, whereas other places with a reasonable amount of space can come up with all sorts of creative ideas about how they can deliver food or drink or collection or whatever it happens to be.
Thanks, Dan. A little bit of fogger communication going on there and costs and stuff, so but there's some guidance that's been shared, and Dan will share his details afterwards as well. And Claire, just saying it's really important for attractions to make sure that accommodation providers are aware of what's open. Claire, I think we can help you a little bit, well, all of the hotel and accommodation providers with that a bit, so I'll definitely take that away as an action too. Alison, you could just create a list of websites based on the leaflets so that visitors can search them. You can, and I think that's certainly a role for CT. Leslie, she's had a look at the hospitality guidelines. They refer you back to the government website. They will, Leslie, but my understanding is that what's come out this morning is that greater detail. If it isn't, then we've got to go back to them again.
Just going back there, Jill, in terms of listing attractions as well, I know that the LDHA have an app. They've had it for a while. They've completely changed that now and are just listing attractions on it. And that's not just for members of the LDHA, it's any attractions that want to list on there that they're open, and it's just a link through to their website. And I know that a lot of the hoteliers are going to send that on to their guests beforehand.
That's helpful, thank you. A little bit of UV discussion going on there as well. People talk about, which is, there's some really positive stuff in here around bookings that are coming for overseas for in August. Sorry, I've got lots of emails coming in at the same time, which is stopping me from moving my cursor down. And then if we had a fogger, would that mean we wouldn't have to charge for mattress protectors, Dan?
No, they're kind of two very separate things, really. The fogger pumps out chemicals into the environment of the accommodation or the room or whatever it happens to be, whereas mattress protectors are specific to that item within the room. So they're not really, it's not really either or. They're both pieces of you know, protective or cleaning or protective equipment that you might choose to use within your environment, and you need to sort of make that decision based on availability, what's appropriate, you know, the time to do it. If you've got one fogger and 20 rooms, it's going to be a challenge to use it every single time you have a check-in or check-out or changeover. So it might be that you need to look at something else to use, which you can use or can do every single time you have a changeover. So you just need to look at all the you know, those things that are appropriate to your business. It might be that, you know, you need 10 foggers to do the number of rooms you've got to do it every single time. It might mean you do it every other changeover. You know, it's about looking at what's appropriate to your business, whether it be accommodation, visitor attraction, or whatever. Obviously sticking to the guidance, but also going above and beyond where you can with where it's appropriate, and then use that as a tool to reassure and market to guests and potential guests.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay. And then I suspect the answer is completely, yeah, it's up to you really on this one. But Jackie's asking, you know, if you've got someone, Dan, that originates from a high-risk country, and you suspect that they haven't quarantined, perfectly within your rights to be able to cancel that booking.
Yeah, if that's what you want. To be fair, if people can book your accommodation for 2 weeks and quarantine there, you can quarantine in a hotel or rented or holiday accommodation. I suspect the chances of that happening with us in the foreseeable at this time are very, very low. My understanding, and this is just my understanding, is that the level of checks in our area for people quarantining is quite high, but I think that's because the police haven't really got much else to do at the moment. As they get a bit busier, that might change. But yeah, if you're not happy to have somebody quarantining in your accommodation, I don't see any reason why you shouldn't refuse that booking should you choose to.
Great, thank you. And then Jen, can you repeat the app that you were talking about, please?
Yeah, it's always been there. It's one that the Lake District Hotels Association created a few years ago. But what they're doing very quickly is just adapting that and just to list list attractions that are open. And it's just a direct link. I've used the link straight to my Book Now page, and it's one that hotels are going to send out to the guests before they get here, that guests can download, and then they can see on there the businesses that are open. Now, please, if anyone wants to be listed on there, just bob me an email at the end, and I'll just let you know what we need to get you on there.
Thanks, Jen. Joanne's question here, Dan, if you can help me with this one. Joanne's meant a quarantine of 48 hours for life. I'm not quite sure. Does it mean best? Is there a general rule? Yeah. Jen, you tell me. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I see what it means. Yes, I'm catching up slowly.
Life jackets, buoyancy aids, they need to be quarantined for 48 hours before they're used again. So when our self-drives come in, we clean them, we bag them, and we leave them for 48 hours, and then we can reuse them. It was 72, it got reduced to 48.
Brilliant, thanks, Jen. Okay, Dominic, live chat, we've actually got it on the visitor facing site, so definitely have a look at that. It is really lovely to see all of this engagement and sharing, collaboration that's going on, so we'll definitely look at that. And I think we've answered the question there around the app. Thanks, Jen. Where can I find risk assessment templates specifically for B&B? Can only find one for industries. We will take a look through the guidance that's just come out this morning for you there, Jill. Johnny, if I can just ask you to make a note of that and try and find that for you. And I think that takes, as far as I can see, that takes us down towards the bottom of the questions. Can anybody see any other questions? Johnny, am I missing any questions?
There's a couple in the chat that I've just sent through that we've had through Facebook. The three of you should be able to see them if you scroll through the chat.
Okay. Johnny, I might need your help with that actually. Can you help me there?
The bottom of your screen should be right in the middle, or if you press Alt and H, it should pop up.
Alt and H. Okay. I can't see anything different there, Johnny, to what's previously been asked. I don't know if Jen and Dan can see any additional questions, because what I don't want to do is cut this off. Okay, there's some I can definitely see some things now. Give me a second, folks, and I will catch up. Okay.
The future of a second peak. If an area is locked down, i.e. Cumbria or Keswick, are we responsible for relocating guests? Similarly, if we have guests that are booked in and they can't travel, will their insurance compensate us? How do they know if they're cancelling due to COVID versus just cancelling? I don't know about insurance companies. Us as a company, we would refund the guest. If they said that they lived in Dorset and Dorset got locked down, then yes, we would refund the guest. But I don't know in terms of having to relocate them, I don't think the owners would sit with the businesses.
Yeah, there's two, as Jen hinted at there, there's two very distinct situations. One is where you can't operate because there's another outbreak, and then you're back to doing exactly what you did the last time around on the 23rd of March or whatever. So we've all got experience at doing that, and we've hopefully learned a bit from that, possibly the hard way with cash flow and whatever. But there's also, as Jen said, there's also the issue where we can operate quite fine, but people can't travel here where they've made a booking, and that's slightly more tricky. So, for example, we've got bookings for people from Scotland arriving on the 4th, but they can't travel here to take up their bookings, and that's very much a case of you need to do what's right for your business. In those circumstances, we're going back to what we did in late March, exactly like Jen and her businesses. We are giving people choice so they can move their booking, have a cash voucher or have a refund. During the lockdown, as I'm sure most people are aware, the Competition and Markets Authority did publish guidance around refunds for travel products, which said that basically COVID trumps T's and C's. So you have to give a refund. And a lot of this was prompted by airlines and the way they were dealing with it. It is guidance until it's challenged, and then it will probably become some kind of law. But everybody has taken that on board as what you have to do. So we can send a link round to that if people haven't seen it.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you. That's great. We're just coming up towards the hour-and-a-half mark, and it's just been an amazingly informative session. We've had well over 100 people on it at its peak. There's still 91 of you that have stayed with us and been able to. So thanks very much for that. We've taken well over 40 odd questions, or when I say we, I actually mean Jen and Dan. Jen, Dan, thank you so much. I know the feedback last time poured in about how valuable and useful that had been, and it's obvious that people have found that really helpful. Just being able to come together, isn't it, sometimes, and be able to see what other people are doing. And thanks sincerely to everybody that's been on the chat this time. There's loads of good information that you've shared between yourselves. We'll take it away, and Johnny will do a recording of this session, so it will be available to people who haven't been able to listen this time, or if you want to go back through some particular points, it'll probably be early next week before that's there, and we'll share all of the links that we've discussed and follow up on questions that we weren't able to directly answer today. Just a big round of applause, or a silent round of applause for Johnny. He's the guy behind the camera who makes all of this work. So thanks very much, Johnny, and thanks very much to everybody. Really good luck in your preparations. There's another webinar on Monday, which is going to be specifically around the accreditation scheme. So if you're interested and you haven't yet signed up, do sign up, and I'll certainly see you again on Monday. Thanks, everyone.
Just want to say, if anyone does need any, wants anything answering, quite happy to send my contact details around as well, because I think, yeah, the best way to get through this is just working with each other and learning from each other. So more than happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, same.
Thanks so much. Thanks, everybody. Thanks.
Thank you.